Hi, welcome back to my channel. I'm going to do my inconsistent weekly reads. It is now Monday, September 12th, and I'm going to try to get these up every week, but I can't always guarantee that I will. But let's get started. My weekly reads usually go from Monday to Monday, but I was looking at my Google Calendar and I'm thinking, well, the first was on a Thursday, so why not count what I read from Thursday the 1st until today the 12th? And that's what I'm going to do. And without any further ado, we're going to start with The Silence Before Dawn by Amanda Lees. Now, The Silence Before Dawn is book number 1 in the World War II Resistance series. And in this particular book, our character, Marianne, is part of a resistance network that she joins in order to send coded messages and to receive and decipher coded messages in order to try to thwart Hitler and his minions. Now, the thing is, there was a traitor amongst their midst. And in fact, the man that she's in love with, Jack, he was captured by the Germans, and she's fairly certain, and other people in her group are fairly certain that Jack is a traitor. If Jack's not the traitor, can Marianne prove his innocence, and can they avoid anybody in their unit from being caught, murdered, tortured, captured, tortured, and murdered for the secrets? So this says that at the end of this, it says it's based on the true stories of fearless women secret agents and their tales of bravery, betrayal, and love. It also says this is the first book in the heart-pounding, heart-wrenching, and totally addictive World War II Resistance series. So if that's the first book in the series, then the second book in the series, which I have, by the way, this came out on, this is not out yet. This video will be out a day before this book review goes up. But I do have book number 2, which comes out November 27th. It's called Paris at First Light. And so each of the books in this series will feature strong women who were in the resistance or part of the resistance. Then I read Our Stolen Child. Now, Our Stolen Child is about a couple, and this couple was using in vitro fertilization in order to try to have their precious child. And they had experienced treatment after treatment after treatment, and they had all failed. Well, they have one last embryo. And by the way, her name is Quinn and his name is James. So when they go to the fertility clinic to have that last embryo implanted, they get devastating news from the doctor/technician. I'm sorry, your embryo is missing. Well, where is her embryo? Okay, what's going on? So James and Quinn go home and get another phone call. We found your embryo. Great. When can we come? Sorry, can't come in. What? Well, we discovered that your embryo was somehow implanted into the uterus of another woman, and now there's a 3.5-year-old little girl being raised by somebody else. Quinn goes nuts. Okay, first thing she says, I want to meet her. Okay, Emily is a little girl. I want to meet her. So in order to meet Emily, they have to go through some hoops because Emily is being raised by someone else. So then this book deals with gestational versus biological. Which parent has the right to little Emily? Quinn being the biological parent, Quinn and James being the biological parents of that embryo that was transplanted. Nora is the gestational parent of little Emily and who has legal rights over Emily and how not to upset Emily's life. That was Our Stolen Child by Melissa Weisner. Excellent, excellent, excellent book. The next book I reviewed is Three Small Bones, And I'm looking at my reading list, and I'm glad to say that for the first time in a while, since I've done a wrap up, most of these books are being read ahead of time. So that's kind of cool. I just noticed that. So I want to bring up Three Small Bones, and that's by Jennifer Chase, if I'm not mistaken. Yes. And Three Small Bones is Detective Katie Scott number 8. And yes, I think I have read all of the books in this series. I'm just checking Goodreads. Yes, I've read all of the previous books in the series. So what happens in Three Small Bones? Well, we have our character, Katie, who is called onto a case because they found old bones. Now, Katie and her partner have been working cold cases, so quite naturally they get called to the case. Well, they discover that there's also proof of current murders. So the question is, will Katie be able to find out what happened with those bones? And by the way, those bones were found due to a small fire or a house fire. That house may have been destroyed, but evidence of those bones was unearthed when they were looking over the property, trying to see if there was an incendiary cause to that fire. And that's how the bones were discovered. Now, Katie works for her uncle, Sheriff Scott, but there's also one other thing about Katie, is Katie had been in the military and she's dealing with PTSD. And because she's dealing with PTSD, and it looks like I haven't even written this review, she does have some flashbacks to when she was in the war. But she has her military partner, Cisco, a German Shepherd, I believe, that now he is kind of her emotional support dog. So I love the Katie Scott series by Jennifer Chase, and I love Three Small Bones. So our next book is My Husband's Secret by L.G. Davies. Now, we have Avery, who is a happy housewife. Life is going well. They're doing well, okay, financially. They have a beautiful little 5-year-old girl named Mia. Everything's cool in her life, except her husband Keith is struck by a car, and now he's in the hospital. So she rushes to the hospital, and when she gets to the hospital, he's barely conscious, badly injured and barely conscious, and he utters 4 words: "I took a life." So now Avery is more than overwhelmed with what in the world did Keith mean, and was he hiding something? Is there something that about his past? But wait a minute, Avery's the one with the past. And believe it or not, when her and Mia go to stay with their parents, that past that Katie has hid successfully from Keith starts to unravel. Those secrets start to unravel. Now, Keith is in a coma, so she's not getting any more answers from him. So she's digging for answers herself, and this means leading back into her past. And that's all I'm going to tell you about that one. And then I had The Lost Ticket. Oh my goodness, this was so lovely. We have an older gentleman, and he was on a bus one day, the number 88. His name is Frank. He was on the number 88 bus, and he met a lovely young woman who was an artist. In fact, they talked so much about art and her love of art that, number 1, she sketched a picture of him while they were on the bus, but number 2, she talked about a museum that she loved and how she could spend hours and hours gazing at just one painting. So they agree to meet at the museum, and she gives him her number on, I think, the back of a bus ticket. Guess what? Frank loses that number. He loses that ticket. That's why the book is called The Lost Ticket. Frank spends the next 60 years looking for that woman. But Frank's not alone in looking for her. In fact, she has Libby, he has Libby. Just gonna let that truck go by. And he has his carer, and I can't think of his name right now. And Libby and his carer worked together to help Frank try to find that woman from decades ago. That means a lot of rides on the number 88 bus. And this book had a reminiscent feel to it. Yes, a reminiscent feel to this book. And it was by Freya Sampson. And let me tell you, this book gave me all the feels. Okay, and I do realize that I have my book review, so we're going to get the name of Frank's carer, Dylan. Libby's life was at a crossroads because of a past relationship. And that past relationship cost Libby her job. Or she left her job because of the failure of that relationship. So now the question is, will her and Dylan ever go anywhere? And will Frank ever find that lost woman? Then we have the Most Likely Club. This was by Elyssa Friesland, and we have 4 women who are about to celebrate or go to their 25th high school reunion. Now, when they were graduating high school, in their yearbook, they had listed some superlatives. I did not even know what superlatives were, but go figure, I didn't know. Those superlatives were most likely to win the White House, cure cancer, open a Michelin-starred restaurant, and join the Forbes 400. Did those 4 women, and they are Melissa, Priya, Tara, and Suki, achieve their superlatives? For those who did or did not, this 25th high school reunion is giving them the opportunity to stop, get off the ride, so to speak, reset everything, and try to achieve those superlatives. And that's what this book is. It's another, like I had just mentioned, how The Lost Ticket had a reminiscent feel to it. Well, so did the Most Likely Club, because these women were working to try to better their lives after realizing that they did not meet their high school projections or superlatives. Then we have the Bletchley Girls by Anna Stewart. Now, the Bletchley Girls, the word Bletchley comes from a place in the UK called Bletchley Park, which I had not heard of prior to reading this book. But if you search the word Bletchley on Goodreads, you're going to get other books, because other books were written with that background, with that setting. Well, our 3 girls in this book are Elyssa, Fran, and Steffi, and they met up in this park. They became roommates, and then they became spies, and then they went to different locations. One went to Egypt, one went to, I want to say Malta in Egypt, but I'm thinking, anyway, they one stayed in Bletchley Park, one went here, one went there, and they all worked together in the common goal for the resistance during World War II, achieving their goals of trying to code the best way they could and read codes, including using skill of language. And between language and understanding secret code, they were able to help thwart the activities of Hitler. So then I moved on to Death Among the Diamonds by Fliss Chester. Yeah, the first book in the Cressida Fawcett series by Fliss Chester. And it's called Death Among the Diamonds, and it's a cozy mystery. Now, just like many cozy mysteries I read, there's a nice little doggy that is part of what Cressida does, or Cress, as she solves crimes. And her little dog was, I think, a little pug. Well, her dog was named Ruby. I'm just drawing a blank on the breed. Now, basically, she is living in 1920s London. There's a murder, and before you know it, Cressida becomes an amateur sleuth. Book 1 in a new series. I cannot tell you how much I love starting off new series, and I was glad to start with this one. Then we have When We Were Innocent by Kate Hewitt. Now, Libby Trent is married. She has a family, and her father is living with them. But then she gets a visitor, and the visitor knocks on her door, and he says that we're looking for a man named Hans Brenner, an escaped Nazi soldier. He's been missing since the Second World War, and as a matter of fact, we have evidence that he just might be residing in this house. She goes, no, my father's name is Daniel Weiss. He's an accountant. He's not Hans Brenner. Well, what does character Libby do? She does her darndest to try to prove that her father is not a Nazi war criminal named Hans Brenner. In fact, granted her mother left them, but didn't he marry a Jewish woman, or at least a half Jewish woman? So how could he have been a Nazi? That is what When We Were Innocent is all about. And what makes this book so thrilling is the question comes to mind on an ethical level. Would Libby, if she found information on her father, would she want him prosecuted for his Nazi war crimes? That is the ethical thing that came up in this book. Would her father pay for his crimes if he indeed was Hans Brenner? Well, as you're trying to see what Libby is going to do or what Libby might find out, the story is in dual timeline fashion, goes back to World War II when we met Hans Brenner and his younger sister and what they experienced while he was doing what he could in the war efforts. So if that's who Hans Brenner was in the first, like in the first older timeline, then who is Daniel Weiss in the newer timeline? And that's what Libby is desperate to find out. Then we're going to move on to Death on the Menu, Adam and Eve Mystery Number 3. Now, granted, she's called Fran in the book. Her name is Francesca Eve, and his name is Adam. She's 40-something, he's 20-something. She's a caterer, traveling caterer many times, and he's a computer whiz. And her most newest catering job is to cater a kind of like a funeral service day, like to talk about someone that had passed away. And when these people gather, then something else happens and someone else dies. And now Fran is investigating in her job as a great amateur sleuth what happened to that character. And that person, his name was Clarence, by the way. And then we have her calling on Adam because of his technical skills, or he's a very, very geeky person. He knows everything about computers and cell phones and codes. And so they work together as a great team. I love their age difference. The fact that she's married with, I think, a 12-year-old daughter shows that there'll never be anything between her and Adam other than friendship and their professional ability to solve crimes. Then I read The Girl from Guernica, and this was another historical fiction. And Our Girl from Here, by the way, this was from Karen Robards. Now, in this book, we have 1937, Guernica, Spain, and now there are bombs that have fallen. Our girl, Sibby, who was 16 years old at the time, is fairly well separated from her mother and her sisters, and she flees to safety. And when she flees to safety, even the shelter that she took refuge in, gets bombed, and she's barely pulled out of the rubble by an American soldier named Griff. Thankful that she's alive, she's wondering and worried about her sisters and about her mother. What is their fate? Well, based on what happened right after she was rescued, Sibby is now living with her father, but there's something behind that. He is a genius when it comes to aircraft and anything that flies. And he was kind of, recruited by the Germans to help build aircraft that would help them to win the war. Well, quite naturally, Sibby was acting as a spy to resist these war efforts, and where she got that special skills to do that was because of what she learned from her father. Now, it's an underground resistance, and it doesn't stop with with Sibby. It doesn't stop with the American soldier that rescued her, Griff. It doesn't stop with her father. But where does it go? Well, you have to read The Girl from Guernica to find out. Then we have the Book Haters Club. Now, the name of the title alone should give you an idea that it's a little bit off. Why is there a club of book haters? Well, it's because the owners of this particular bookstore, called the Rainbow, worked hard to turn non-readers into readers. So there's where your title comes from. But there was more to this. We have Elliot, who passed away. And when he passed away, as co-owner of the Rainbow Bookstore, Irma, his business partner, and Bree and Lainey's mother decides to sell the bookstore that she and Elliot ran. Well, Lainey and Bree are wondering, what is mom into that she has to sell this bookstore and sell it now? I thought it was to be our legacy. I thought we'd take over the bookstore and run it forever until our children step in. Well, we have one other person. We have Elliot's partner, Tom. So between Tom, Bree, and Lainey, they try to stop the sale and to get behind the reason that Irma is putting the bookstore up for sale. Then the next book I had was The Getaway, and this was by Emily March. Now, in this particular book, Genevieve Prentice is about to have Thanksgiving, and the holidays were the begin all and end all to her. And she has 4 adult children. One son calls, Mom, I can't make it. The other son calls, Mom, I have to go away on business. I can't make it. So what does our character Genevieve do? She cancels Thanksgiving, and her sister have pizza for Thanksgiving. The next thing Emily does is she buys a property. And she has every intent on either turning this property into like a bed and breakfast or just turning it over for profit. And that's why it's called The Getaway, because it's in a very beautiful location. Well, Prentice isn't the only one that goes there. Her son Jake ends up there. And then Jake's previous employee, Tess Crenshaw, ends up there. And other people end up there, but I won't tell you who. But wasn't Genevieve's goal was to get away, to get past the fact that her children were constantly disappointing her? Well, will Emily be able to get past all of that and to be able to have some kind of, well, she's looking for an epiphany. As a matter of fact, there's Epiphany 1 and Epiphany 2. Does she meet the objectives of these epiphanies? We'll just leave it at that. So that is The Getaway by Emily March. Then we have Taken Before Dawn, which is a Josie Quinn novel. I will look it up because I don't remember which number it is. I'm thinking 8 or 9. Oh, it's 7. Detective Casey White, number 7. And here we have how Casey and her almost fiance Jericho are in bed, and Casey gets a phone call, and she's called to the scene of a crime. While that's happening, or before it happens, or in conjunction with that, their workmate Samantha turns up missing. Now, as mentioned, Casey goes to the scene of a crime. Well, when she gets to the body of a young woman, the body has very specific details on and around that body that make Casey 100% sure that this is a serial killer who was called the Midnight Killer maybe about a dozen years ago, several years ago. I'm not sure how many. So now Katie, who is living in the Outer Banks in North Carolina, has to go back to Philadelphia, where she was on the police force there, and try to figure out how they can stop this midnight killer that has seemingly risen out of the ashes. That is what Taken Before Dawn is. Very, very, very good book. Very good book. Then I had Do You Take This Man by Denise Williams. And this was, I want to say it's a rom-com. It is a rom-com. But what I love about this book is it had some very serious moments. Okay? And our characters are an event planner and a wedding officiant. RJ is the officiant and Lear is the wedding planner. How did they each fall into their new roles? Well, RJ is a very successful, very busy divorce attorney who did a favor acting as an officiate at friends' weddings. That went viral. And now Katie splits her free time between doing what she needs to do in her life and officiating at these weddings. Then we have Lear, whose cousins are actually his cousin and her wife are the actual owners of this wedding planning business, but they need to go away. So Lear steps up and steps in, and now he's working side by side with RJ fairly often. But the ticket is, they're like oil and water. They hate each other on sight. Now, you might want to say, oh, so this is an enemies to lovers? Maybe. Are they friends with benefits? No. What are they? They are enemies with benefits. True. They can't keep their hands off each other. They just can't stop. But guess what? Action speaks louder than words. And this enemy relationship of theirs starts to evolve into something else. I took a long pause there because guess what? Don't want to give you any I don't want to give you any spoilers, so I'm trying to be wary of that. Then we have An Autumn Kiss by Laura Rollins. Now, I feel like, I just did the video for that. I'm like, why did I feel like I've talked about this? But, I'm working ahead of time. Now, because this book doesn't come out to September 20th. This was a Timeless Victorian Collection number 7, and it was a trilogy or a 3-book novella, and it was Laura Rollins, Annette Lyon, and Lisa H. Catmull. I had it as an audiobook, and there were 3 delightful titles. Lauren Rollins' title was The Plucky Miss Ruth. Annette Lyon's title was Mr. Darling's Remedy. And then Lisa H. Catmull's novella was A Railway Through the Roses. All very, very good stories. Favorite would probably be books 1 and book 2. Then I had The Winter Orphans, and we have a group of young people who were being protected by the Swiss Red Cross. And what the Swiss Red Cross would do is they were trying to help as many older teenagers escape into Switzerland from Paris that they could. And the thing is, the younger children were fairly safe from being sent to an extermination camp or being sent to a labor camp. But the older teenagers could either be conscripted, arrested, even tortured and executed. So we have 2 stories here. We have Swiss volunteers Rosalie Nav and Anne-Marie Piguet, who were trying to get these teenagers to safety. But then you have the other story. The main story is Ella Rosenthal and her sister Hani. Okay, Ella and Ani lost their parents to deportation, and now Ella is responsible for Hani. But Ella knows that she can never get away with the plan that Rosalie and Anne-Marie are working through because she never wants to lose honey. So that is what the Winter Orphans was. Excellent review. It's not going to be out for a minute, so you won't see the video for a minute. Then we had The Millionaire's Wife, and this was by Shalini Boland. And in this particular book, let me just bring it up. In this particular book, you have a couple. I know the husband's name is Will. I'm just trying to give you her name. Oh, Anna. So you have Anna and you have Will, happily married, right? Will's a millionaire. They don't want for anything, but Anna gets a phone call or a text. I think it's a text. It's a combination of phone calls and texts. It's your turn. Her turn to do what? Well, Anna has some secrets from her past, and it's those secrets that are coming to light right now and will throw a wrench into any happiness, any joy, any contentment she has with her husband, Will. Her ex is named Finn, so the story goes in the timeline goes from the past to the present to the past to the present. So in the past, you see how Anna's relationship with Finn grew and what happened in that relationship. But in the present, we see her married to Will and what that past could do to destroy her marriage. Then I had my least favorite book of the month, and I'm not likely even to make a video on this, but it was The Best Friends by The Best Friend Singular by Jessica Fellows. And the way this book was written, it was like the chapters were 9, 14, 21, 23, 25. And I'm like, why are they skipping chapters? Well, because those chapters were really diary years. The two were best friends from yay high, and their friendship broke up, fizzled out, walked out of the building. So now we recount the past through those various years. So if you get this book and you look at the table of contents, you're going to see a very interesting table of contents. The next book I read was this one, Killers of a Certain Age by Deanna Raybourn. Now, she has a historical cozy mystery series which has 7 or 8 books that I've already read. That's the Veronica Speedwell series. And then she has this one. And this is a singular title. It's as irreverent and as disrespectful as can be because, as you can see, they're killers. Who are these killers? Well, they are 4 women who were recruited together over 40 years before as assassins to get rid of the less than in our populations. Okay, it could be Nazi war criminals, it could be pedophiles, it could be drug dealers. They were killing and killing and killing to keep the streets clean. Well, guess what? 40 years have passed and the kill order has been passed on to them. They are now the mice in this cat and mouse game. Can our 4 women, and I'm trying to find their names, but I'm not going to be able to pull up the names, but can our 4 women thwart the would-be assassins, and will they kill or be killed? And that is Killers of a Certain Age. Last but not least, I read Drunk on Love by Jasmine Guillory. And what I love about this book is the rom-com nature of these books that she writes is off the chain. But what's more is the characters are really good characters. Because in this book, and they're African American in this book as well, we have Margaret Noble and Luke Williams. They meet in a bar, they hit it off, they have a fabulous one-night stand. And as far as Margot is concerned, that was nice, that was hot, but it won't happen again. And then she gets to work that Monday morning, and her brother, she knew her brother had hired a couple of new people, but she hadn't vetted them yet. So she gets into the office, the winery. They have a winery. They're a huge winery. Guess what? One of her new employees is none other than Luke, the man that she had the one night fling with. How are they going to be able to work together? And how are they going to be able to work together when they still have that strong, incredible attraction to each other that refuses to let up? That is Drunk on Love by Jasmine Guillory. So I just want to show you this really quickly. I did print out that part of my spreadsheet. okay? The color codes is publisher. That's Bookouture, that's Harlequin, that's Berkeley. I don't quite remember what in Autumn Kiss I think is. Oh, I can't think. But that's a different publisher. So that's what the colors are. Berkeley, a different publisher, Harlequin, and Bookouture. So now I only have, oh, it's not on this page. I only have maybe 3 or 4 more books to read for my September, to be done with my September. So if I bring that up, see, Drunk on Love, that's the one I'm reading now. I've read all of those down to here. So I've got these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 to go. The Foster Family, Operation Mom, The Italian Daughter, The New Couple, The Child Between Us, and Millstone of Doubt. Those are what I have left for September, and I am trying to, keep my content fluid and ongoing so that I can start looking at what's happening in October. So that is it for now. I want to thank you for watching. I'm going to thread all this together and see what I can do after this. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.